For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Shannon de Rehove. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me for Suttner's View, a weekly commentary on South Africa's political scene. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, the EFF has caused or has captured the public imagination in Parliament with their wearing of overalls and other dress, signifying their identification with working people. There's also a sense that they have given Parliament a deserved shaking up. Do you think that they will make a substantial difference to the character of South African politics?
I was in Parliament, in the first Parliament, and it's quite a boring place, quite staid, and in some ways, in a boyish way, I appreciate some shaking up. But I think we have to recognize this is the legislature, and these are elected MPs, and they are a political party, and we need to assess what they're doing in a sober way. I think that the gift that Julius Malema and the EFF have is an understanding of grievances that people have, outrage that people feel, and they've been able to tap into this. They have recognized that the ANC has been insensitive on issues like Marikana. To this day, they remain insensitive to it. So the EFF have sought to tap into popular feeling, and they have recognized that a lot of people believe that 20, and correctly so, that 20 years after democracy, they still do not have houses, still do not have water, electricity, etc., etc. Not everyone, probably not a majority of people, but very many people have got good reason to be dissatisfied. Now, in some ways, the EFF are unlikely characters to take up the struggles of the poorest of the poor. If we remember the background of Julius Malema before he was expelled from the ANC, and even this year, he was implicated in various tenders which resulted in poor road construction in Limpopo province. He owes the taxpayer 16 million rands. Now, this is a man who has never had a job before he worked for the ANC. Now, when I worked for the ANC, I was earning 2,000 rands a month in 1990. Now, things have changed a lot, but not so much that a youth leader can be wearing these fancy watches and drinking the best whiskey. I didn't know there was such a thing as Blue Label till I read about their parties. So they're not really the most obvious candidates for the role of champions of the poor, but they've recognized that this strikes a chord. And I think it's very important for us to understand the difference between the popular and populism. Now, I've referred to this before, but I think some people may not have been in that interview. When we talk about popular activities, we mean people taking up grievances and having meaningful programs to realize popular aspirations. Now, populist is also to take up the grievances at a verbal level, at the level of slogans, but it is not meaningful in the sense that it is not coupled with strategies to realize objectives that will alleviate the problems of the poor. And I think this is at the heart of the problem that I have with the EFF. They may wear overalls. They may call for the nationalization of this, that, and the other. But have they thought of practical ways in which this will be implemented and what it will mean for the economy as a whole? Now, nationalization in relation to the mines is a problem, because already the mineral wealth of the country is already state-owned. So it's a misnomer to say that that has to be done. The mines have leased the rights to exploit minerals. So what we need to ask ourselves is, what is a desirable property regime or ownership regime or exploitation regime in relation to mines, in relation to land? What means can be used to ensure that more of the benefits of the mineral wealth and the land wealth of the country go to the poorest of the poor? Now, some studies, if you look at the YouTube interviews or, talks, there was a recent Saxis discussion on nationalization, especially Neil Coleman and Duma Gungqubele made very interesting inputs on the complicated options that a state may resort to, drawing on examples from a number of other countries, but also looking at the statistics of how much tax they've actually paid in the case of the mines. The land is also complicated. Have they looked at the actual legislation that is applied? What does it mean that the new land restitution bill that is being introduced is opening up the possibility of land claims going back indefinitely almost, so that Goy and San can make claims? Have funds been put aside for this? So there are a lot of these things that come into any discussion, any serious discussion of what are called radical demands. Now, the word radical is used in relation to them. Now, the word radical means go to the root of something. And my view is that they don't go to the root of problems. They are employing political theatre, and that is legitimate, but whether they are serious is another matter.
And how do you feel about their disruptions in Parliament?
You see, when I mentioned that I was in the first Parliament, and when we went there, we had planned that we would transform various parts of Parliament. For example, the committee system had previously been behind closed doors, and we had them opened, and now people can petition Parliament, things like that. We also introduced things that seem to have fallen away. For example, you didn't have to use the word honourable, and also clothing was, as long as you were not unkempt, it was legitimate to wear what you wanted to wear. But that seems to have fallen away. I don't recall exactly what happened before I left, the details. But now, the idea then of having a parliament which is less formalistic is a good thing. But it is not desirable to be insulting. And in fact, if you are called to order, one of the things that one can see from any parliament, whether it's the British Parliament or any other, people find another way of saying the same thing. For example, if you want to say the ANC is responsible for the Marikana massacre, and you say that they are murderers, you say, Madam Speaker, I will withdraw that and say that the ANC has got total responsibility for the death of the miners in Marikana. So you have a number of ways of dealing with the same thing. And I think that they did have some important things that they wanted to say, and it was possible to say those without breaking the rules of Parliament. There's a difference between stirring up people's emotions around legitimate outrage and just creating unseemly situations. And although, I myself have sometimes created disturbances in the past, I think there's a time and a place, and they could have done it differently.
Do you think it's just simply a case of his inexperience?
No, it's very conscious, very conscious. Now, what experience he's got, he's using as a sort of, let's say, I don't want to say he's a thug, but he's got thuggish tendencies. If you remember the press conference before, when he was Youth League, now and some of the others also are quite rough in their politics, so they bring it into a different forum.
Well, thank you for your insight.
Thanks a lot.
That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking about South Africa's political scene.